All right, we'll call the Finance, Audit, and Budget meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, motion to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion? Oh, Romano, supported by, I think Pernick was first? Okay, all right, and I am going to ask you guys to call your name out, because even though I know all your names, in the middle of chairing, you look at somebody and you do like Romano and say, what's your name again? Moved and supported. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Approve the minutes dated November 21st, 2022. Is there a motion?
So moved, Hall.
Support? Moved by Haas, supported by Nard. Questions, comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Public participation, 3 minutes per speaker. Does anyone wish to be heard? Hi.
Yes. Hello.
He's speaking to an agenda item.
Right. Thank you. My name is George Brumbaugh. I live at 43738 Catawba Drive in Clinton Township. I'm a retiree of Macomb County. I worked here for 30 years and 1 day. First 7 years I was an assistant corporation counsel. The last 23 I was the corporation counsel for the county until my retirement 9 years ago. I'm also the president of the Retirees Association, of which we have 822 members. I'm also the representative of the retirees on the Retirement Commission. I'm here today to ask you to support the recommendation coming from the Retirement Commission on 7E, a supplemental payment to 1,973 retirees. You should know a couple things about the retirement system. There's no cost of living adjustment for retirees. So what somebody got in 2000 when they retired, they get today in 2022. It's the same amount of money. The retirees represent and contributed to this county during their years of service. What's been recommended, and I would point out that the recommendation comes from esteemed members of the county, Commissioner Hall, the county treasurer, Mr. Rocca, the chief deputy county executive, Mr. Delden, all are on the Retirement Commission, all voted in favor of this pension supplement as it's referred to in the ordinance itself. We believe that even this small amount of money, which averages out to a payment of approximately $300 and some odd dollars, $363 per retiree, that's on the average. You should also be aware that retirees, the average age of a retiree in Macomb County is 70 years old. They receive an average pension of $22,710. There are beneficiaries also who receive pension benefits. They number in 392 of those people. Their average age is 72, and their average yearly income from the pension system is $15,702. Those are numbers that come from the actuary who does an annual report back to the Retirement Commission. That's where I got those numbers from, off of that report, which is online. Again, we're asking that you approve this.
George, you have 15 seconds.
Okay, thank you. And on behalf of all the retirees in Macomb County, we ask for your consent and approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard?
Thank you. My name is Tom Kelkoven, 12402 Frank Drive, Bruce Township. Like George, I'm also a member of the board of the Retirees Association. I am the former Director of Public Health for Macomb County, 38-year employee. I've been retired, I guess, about 12 years. Just briefly, just a couple of points that I wish to make. Number one, this is not a request that will damage the pension system. This is not a request that's made for year after year after year. It's a one-time request placed before you to consider the status of the retirement system, and a request to at least acknowledge the retirees that have, as George said, no ability for a cost of living increase. Excuse me. The systems, programs, and activities that this county has now are a direct result of the retirees in the fruit of their labor. These programs are continued. You're recognized for them. They're good programs. People work very hard to put these in place. So my request to you is to please consider it and to remember the people that came before that put the county on the firm foundation and footing that it is today. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close the first hearing of the public. Presentations. 2022 study report for 2023 Equalized Values. Director Seeloff. Hello.
Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here. I have great news for you. Values are going up. For those of you who don't remember the conversation that we had last year, every year Equalization does a study of the previous year assessments. We do our own appraisal studies. We study the sales. We take a look at what the local unit values are for each property class: industrial, commercial, residential, and then the various categories and personal. We do our own independent studies. We check their values, and then we get an indicated value of true cash. We then compare what their assessment for the whole class is to our true cash value for the whole class, and then that difference determines a ratio. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. This year, the values are all increasing for all of the property classes. I do want to point out one thing in this report that's a little tricky to navigate is the commercial and industrial personal property values. So recently passed legislation, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but the commercial personal has increased from for an exemption that from 80 to 180 true cash value. So that's a sizable change in the exemption amount. It's impossible for me to try to predict what that's going to be. So the values in here for the commercial personal is just basically their values, our study of their values, and the result. There's no predictions as to where we're going to come in at. I will say that there's a good possibility of losing most, if not all, of the industrial personal property class, because 2023 is the year that it all falls off and it all becomes exempt. So they will be paying property taxes in an entirely different manner, and they will be paying them to the state, and then however they get reimbursed. So for those parts of this report, it's just the standard study. We have to forget that this big exemption is happening this coming year, and it's just a flat study of last year, the way our normal process is, because it's a little bit difficult for me to try to predict that stuff. But having said that, there's some good stuff going on in here. Real property increases are about little over 10%, and residential is carrying the majority of that weight at just under 12%. So that's typically what's been happening in the past couple of years. The prices of everything is going up, so It's a typical relationship between those two things. We have a very weird situation this year for the first time since Proposal A in 1994 was passed. We have a situation where the inflation rate multiplier that we're going to use to increase taxable values this year is completely different from the amount that I'm going to be using in the Headley rollbacks. The Headley rollbacks is going to be almost 3% higher than the cap for the taxable value. So what does that mean for us? Well, from a taxing authority, it's a great thing because the property taxes, the taxable values are going to increase at the maximum amount that they can, which has not happened ever since this was passed. In the adverse of that, the millage reduction fraction, the way that that is calculated, it's also going to really limit the amount of the rollbacks. So we have the highest taxable value increase happening at the same time that we will hardly at all roll back those millage rates. So the taxpayer is going to get hit. We're going to get more than we would typically get in a normal situation. And again, I can't give you any idea of where we're going to end up. Steve already hit me with, hey, what do you think the CPI is going to be, or the millage reduction? I have no idea what the rollback is. I don't know what the values are going to be. I don't know what the new construction amounts are. I don't know what the personal property changes, how that's going to affect the taxable values. I will know when I come back and see you in April. I'll be able to give you that. But right now, it's just too up in the air. That's about it for the highlights of this report. If you have any questions, I would be happy to.
Can I get a motion to receive and file? Is there support? There's a motion by Wallace, supported by Nard. Any questions? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you for that.
Thank you for that.
We have the amended apportionment report. I need a motion to approve. Moved by Nard, supported by Van Sickle. Would you like to speak to this?
I just wanted to say back on October 18th, when I first presented this to you, it was prior to the Smart Bus millage being passed. It has now passed, and so now I've added that in there. There were 2 library millages that were also on the ballot. One did pass, one didn't, so I adjusted that. And then one of the townships had incorrectly reported the amount that they levied, so I made that adjustment as well. So all of those adjustments have been corrected in here, and so this should be a much more accurate reflection.
Okay, are there any questions? Chair Brown?
Which township had an error?
Armada.
Armada. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we have department recommendations, contract Blue Cross Blue Shield PPO. And we've also got the HAP HMO, if you'd like to speak to both of them, and I'll get a motion for the first one and then the second. Let me get a motion for the Blue Cross Blue Shield. Moved by Nard, supported by Perna. Okay, all right, thank you. Go ahead, Director Anderson.
Thank you very much, and it's nice to see everyone, and I wish everybody the best of Christmas cheer and prosperous new year. This is our yearly renewal of our employee health care and retiree health care. When I say that, it also includes item D as well, because that's the Medicare Advantage piece for our retirees that are Medicare eligible. So I will speak to the Blue Cross and the HMO BCN and the...
Point of order, Chair. Would the motion maker include item A through D?
Oh, well, I think, are you going to do C separately? What-
Yeah, C is separate. It's a separate
So you
item.
can speak to all 3, but I'm going to do the motions individually because they're different companies. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so what we have is our renewal for the Blue Cross PPO and the Blue Care Network, item A. We received our renewal that, as part of it, it also includes how we compare to the state mandate of how much we can spend on health care for employees, and we have once again met the threshold for that as well. So we don't have any indication at all that we will have any employee payment for their health care based on our renewal numbers. The same goes for HAP HMO as well. I don't know if there's any particular questions on those two items.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for A? All right, there's a motion and support. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Can I get a motion for B, contract with HAP HMO? So moved. Moved by Haas, supported by Van Sickle, and you don't have really, do you have anything else to add with regard to that?
No.
Okay. Are there any questions on that one? All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry, Chair Brown.
What were the pricing increases? What was the market like this year to get that for both of those products?
Well, we came in below the trend, which is very good.
What was the trend at?
I think the trend was about 10 or 11% was the trend, and I believe we came in lower than that. But understanding that when we estimate for 2023, we are merely estimating because we are a self-insured body, and our claims might go up based on our estimate, or they may be even lower based on this estimate. It all depends on the actual health of our employees, whether we pay more for the health insurance, because we, as claims come in, we pay them.
But our trend has been below the average?
Yes. And that's certainly, and that will be very significant when I speak on the Medicare piece.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And we'll put off on D. We'll go to C, contract comprehensive risk services, workers' compensation.
Yes, this is our workers' comp TPA.
Chair, I'll make the motion to forward this full board.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there support? Support, Van Sickle. Go ahead.
This is our workers' compensation third-party administrator that we utilize, and they assist our HR department very significantly when it comes to workers' comp claims. We are basically in the middle of a 5-year potential contract. Our first 3 years are done. This is would be the 4th year, which was allowed for when the board approved it in 2019. The only difference was, and the reason why I'm here, is that they have requested a $27,000 increase for year 2023. This was discussed with our HR department, and they are very satisfied with our current vendor and agreed to that amount increase. Unfortunately, due to COVID, this company has absorbed that situation and had a 272% increase in claims due to COVID based on our population of employees, and therefore they requested this increase for year 4. And it made sense because as I looked around at other workers' compensation programs and the trends that I have read, the trends have gone significantly higher, upwards of 20% higher, due to the impact of COVID nationwide. So we are just asking for an extension on the initial contract, which was approved for the 1 year.
Okay, are there any questions? Commissioner Van Sickle?
Thank you. You say the 27,000 is an increase
Yes, it's an increase.
above what?
Above the initial amount that we pay for their administrative services. So that would be, if we look deeper into the backup information, I believe now we are at $72,000, and before that, we were $27,000 less than that. That's correct, for that particular portion. The other part stays the same at $25,000.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now we'll do the Contract Blue Cross Blue Shield Medicare Advantage for retirees. Is there a motion? Moved by Nard, support? Supported by Ha. Go ahead.
This is the renewal for the Medicare eligible segment of our employees and retirees. And the good news here is that we have a lowering of the costs from Blue Cross for this Medicare Advantage program, which actually bucks the trend. So we are going to save based on our monthly amount, which was not based on claims, but an actual monthly amount that we pay for each retiree is going to be reduced per retiree to the tune of over $1 million for the total program for this upcoming year, which I thought was significant since there has been certain inflationary pressures on the health care. So I was very happy about that renewal after us having discussions with them, and we made our case for a lower amount.
Are there any questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Supplemental pension payment, $715,975 for 1,973 retirees. Is there a motion? Moved by Ha, support by Wallace, and Director Smigiel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Good to see everyone as usual. I'll just supplement some of the information that was shared with you during public participation and a little more history, I guess. So this is a program that's been around since 1991. It's authorized in the pension ordinance. It's completely optional and discretionary on part of both the pension board and the Board of Commissioners. And really what it's meant to do is to think of it as sharing some of the favorable stock market returns in the pension system, since, as was mentioned earlier, there are no cost of living increases on our pensions. So it's a formula-based payment that has no relation to the monthly pension amount. Sometimes it's incorrectly referred to as the 13th check, but it has nothing to do with a 13th pension payment. It's a formula-based payment where a retiree receives 1 point for every year they were an employee, and they receive 1 point for every year they've been retired. You add the two together, you multiply it by $1 per point. That is also discretionary, and that's the payment. The payment has been, generally speaking, over the entire history of the program, about $11 per point per year. It was paid every year from 1991 through 2006. It has not been paid since. It was suspended, so to speak, due to budgetary pressures at the time. So there are 1,973 retirees that are eligible. Eligibility is folks that are 65 or older, unless you're a disability retirement, and then it's regardless of age. Folks on the drop program are not eligible until they actually exit the organization. So the total that's being proposed and has been approved by the pension board is $715,975. 1,973 participants, average of $363. It was mentioned earlier about the financial impact on the system. The funding level of the system, which was 104.85% at the end of 2021, I would estimate would go down 0.07%. So it would be just under 104.8, essentially.
Thank you. Commissioner Ha?
Thank you, Chair. I did want to point out George had indicated the pension board voted on this. The retirees healthcare board and the intermediate board, one of which I chair and one of which Don chairs, has no involvement with this particular recommendation based on advice from legal counsel.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I'd like to make, I'm sorry, I don't want to
Go ahead.
interrupt. One more administrative item that Kyle spoke to me about before the meeting. I think, Commissioner Hall, you may have noticed that. This was originally scheduled to come before the board in November, and it got pushed to December, so the memo that's included indicates that it would go out on the December 1st pension check, which obviously didn't happen. If approved, it'll go out on the January 1st, 2023 pension check.
That was next on my list, Steve, but thank you. Recognizing that there is $1,400,000 in our last actuarial report, this is the money that the retirees have put into the pension system. So what we're talking about is their money. And they have not had an adjustment to their pensions, I think, in reading our documents earlier before our system crashed, since 2007. This is the money that they have put in. This is a one-time recommendation from the pension board, and the average being $363. There are some that are going to get $88, and some are going to get a little bit more based on the point system. So I supported this as well as the rest of the board when it came up for a vote. Our legal counsel advised us it requires confirmation from the Board of Commissioners. We were going to try to get it, as Steve said, on the November agenda. If you recall, the night we had 72 amendments to our budget, so we spent a very lengthy evening on that. I do support this recommendation, and in full transparency, I know I don't have to do this, but I will. I have a cousin that's a retired sheriff, a brother retired sheriff, my mayor is a retired sheriff, and one of our planning commission members is a retired sheriff, all who have approached me adamantly supporting this. So I just thought I would bring that. I know I don't have to, but I thought I would. So I'm in favor of this. The board members, as George or Steve said, Treasurer Roca voted to refer it to the full board, as I did, and the other members. So thank you. That's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. Hey, Steve. Follow-up part of what Commissioner Hawes said, the bottom end of the spectrum is 88. What's the top end of the spectrum?
I think it's a little over $800,
Okay.
in the 800 range.
Okay. So the people that have been here that were with Macomb County longer are the ones that are getting that. It has nothing to do with compensation.
Nothing to do with compensation, has no correlation to the monthly pension benefit.
Okay. And before I make this comment, I'll be clear, I am voting for this. I do support it. But I want full transparency on some of these numbers. First of all, this money is not, in my view, the money of those currently retired in the program. It is the money of theirs and future participants. And that's the big key, because you don't ever want something like this to go bankrupt. And you're still at 104%. That's why I fully support it. But, just to let people know, 2008, 2012, we went from 110% balance down to 92% balance. Again, 92 is not all that bad when you look at the big scope. But just understand, we have had a very long and prosperous stock market. This will not continue, and it probably will be, well, it's already this year, and it'll be next year and so forth. So while I do fully support it, I'm a little worried when I saw that, the first 13 years, 7 times we didn't hit the 8.5% threshold, and yet we still gave the money out. That is a problem that I hope future boards take into consideration, because that can't happen. It should only be in years that we're well above 100, that we're above the 8.5% threshold. So I do support it. I just wanted to give a little bit more context to the entire thing for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steve, a couple process questions for you because I've been here for 6 years and this is the first time I've dealt with this. I appreciate the rundown. I've read through it several times and I still have some questions for you. So when the charter came into play, obviously we haven't done this since the creation of the charter. Does that affect the process at all of how this begins and ends as opposed to when it was done back in 2006
The
to
only
now?
process change was back before the charter, the road commission had to approve it.
Okay.
But there is no road commission, obviously.
Okay, and then in the description, it talks about the value per point, how it's created at the discretion of the pension board, I believe, and the board of commissioners. The value of it, how does that come about?
Back in the day, the idea was that there's a reserve that's also calculated within the system itself. As indicated in the memo, that reserve is at about 4.4 million. It hasn't changed in 2006 because it only changes in years that payments are made.
Okay.
So since no payments have been made in 15 or 16 years, it hasn't changed. The idea back when this was in an every year occurrence was that the point value was meant to arrive at a total payment that would be sustained for 10 years. So take the reserve, you sort of backed into it.
Gotcha.
So it was, one year I think it was as high as 15, 13, but almost every other year was 11.
That's what I noticed, because I saw that little bump here and there, and I was just curious how
11 by
was.
far was the vast majority of the years.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you,
welcome.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any? Commissioner Ha?
Thank you. I do want to clarify, and Steve, you just said it, this is not a 13th check. This is called a supplemental to the retirement system. There's misinterpretation out there through some previous correspondence that this was a 13th check. That's not what, and I appreciate Commissioner Farrington not referring to it as that. So I just want to clarify that.
Correct. So more history. So back when this first started, we were not doing direct deposit for retirees. It was a 13th physical check that a retiree received because we paid it separate. And I think that's where the nomenclature came from. But it, again, has no correlation or association with the amount of a particular person's monthly pension benefit. And they will receive it on their January 1st check along with their normal monthly pension benefit.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Sickle?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Steve.
Good afternoon.
I'm a little bit confused about when people start talking about the funding for a pension system. Commissioner Farrington mentioned that, well, and you did, that we're up around 104% now, and that in the past when the market went down, it was down in the 90s. Is there a liability to the county when it goes down into the 90s? Thank you. Is there a liability to the county when the pension fund sinks down into the 90s?
Sure there is. I mean, the idea of the pension plan is you smooth your gains and losses over time to always, the goal is to keep it at 100%. So when it dips below 100%, the employer contribution will go up. And then when it goes above 100%, then you get credits as you go along. But those are all smoothed over 5-year periods to eliminate the volatility in the employer contribution.
Okay, because earlier, one of the speakers implied that because the pension fund went up, the retirees deserved money from the pension fund. So I was wondering if when the pension fund goes down, whether they're on the hook to make up for it, and you're telling me no.
No, the employer, their contributions are fixed per contract. And so whatever gains or losses that are incurred by the system are ultimately made up by the employer.
Okay, so the citizens will make it up if the stock market goes down, and the retirees get bonuses if the stock market goes up. Is that what you're telling me?
What I'm saying is these payments in the first place are only calculated in years of excess return, as it's referred to, and they don't have to be made. Even in years of excess return, they don't have to be made. They're completely optional and discretionary.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Steve, you said that up to 2006, this was done every year,
Every year,
and then we hit hard times.
correct.
And we've been giving employees pay raises to try to make up for all those years of hard times. And the people that we've kind of not had on our radar to take care of when I would assume if I got a check every year that it's something that even though the county doesn't have to give me, it's something that I would think I would continue to get. And it stopped in 2006 and they didn't get it anymore. So it's the same sort of situation. We're doing better, and it's a group of people that don't get a cost of living allowance that were kind of left behind as well.
Are you looking for a comment?
Well,
I'm just telling you the financial, the financial
well, let me put it
ramifications.
this
I'm
way.
not advocating one way or the other.
We've made moves to address the sacrifices that were made
That's
for
correct.
current employees, correct?
Correct.
We have not made moves to address the sacrifices that were made from retirees during that period, correct?
In terms of this particular
In
program,
terms
we
of
haven't- we
losing
have not
this.
paid this since 2007 or 6.
Okay, all right. Real quick, who made the motion? Yeah, I know. Who made the motion? I did. Okay, and then who supported? Was that Nard? Okay. I'm asking because I have to do a roll call vote on this. Commissioner Ha.
I just wanted to point out to Commissioner Van Sickle, this board meets twice a month under the chairmanship of Mark Delden, 8:30 in the morning, I might add, which is always one of my pet peeves, but nevertheless, what we do is we have money managers and a money consultant. They recommend based on their predictions. We know that the stock market goes up, it goes down. I believe last year's return was in excess of 21 to 22%. Now, when you're looking at $1 billion, that's quite a large sum of money. So that's one way we try to predict and offset losses. But if anybody can tell you what the stock market's going to be like in 6 months, you need to buy a lottery ticket from them. But we use the expertise of these guys to rebalance the investments to try and offset any losses that may take place with the gains by the other parts of the market. It's quite, Jake always talks analytics. You want to talk analytics, you ought to listen to these guys talk sometime. So it's not that it's a set fund and it sits there and grows or declines. There's opportunities within the market as well as disadvantages to increase the fund. And I'm very, very proud of what this board has done over the years to get to 104% funded. It's been a long time. You look at other municipalities, some of them are going bankrupt. This board takes this money that belongs to the retirees, future and past, and very seriously on how it's invested. So I just thought I'd add that. Thank you, Chair.
Is there, Chair Brown?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Steve, a lot of these board members weren't here when the county took steps to make sure that our fund remained solvent, because there was a time when we couldn't sustain the pension benefits that we had promised our employees, correct? We
When
made
the system, the system was closed 2015.
Yeah, that's right. Why did we close it? Because we were going the wrong way, because we couldn't afford to be paying as we go the old way we did things. We awarded contracts, we couldn't support them. But the county wisely, because of our financial stability, and made the decisions to make changes to the pension fund that allowed us to stop the hemorrhaging, if you will, in terms of putting money out of our general fund to try to pay for benefits, and created the trusts that we set up now. Can you tell them a little, can you explain that, what we did there? Because I want to make sure that the retirees understand that this Board of Commissioners took steps about a dozen years ago to make sure that their pensions are going to be protected well into the future, and that a city of Detroit bankruptcy that bankrupted them because they couldn't support the pensions that they promised their employees. Wouldn't happen in Macomb County.
No, and what you're referring to, Commissioner Brown, really revolves, I would say, primarily or more significantly around the retiree health care program.
Yes.
So if you remember, we closed that program and issued the bonds.
Yes.
And so when we closed that plan, it made sense to close the pension system at the same time. We've also made some changes in vesting requirements, maybe in 2012. Went from 8-year vesting to 15-year vesting on the pension system, which lowers cost and
Sure.
Depending on your hire date, maybe you're not eligible for the 70-point system, as we call it, and some things of that nature. But what you're referring to mostly involves savings on the retiree health care program, so that, as we anticipated back then, actual premiums are now exceeding the bond payments.
That's right.
So,
Yeah, so the bottom line is that the system's stable, and the good news is that issuing this payment isn't going to affect, it's not going to negatively affect the future performance of the fund, because we have the returns to pay for it now, and it won't be this will be a one-time payment, correct? It's not going to be a multiple.
that's what's being contemplated as one time.
That's right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
I just got to clarify, though, that doesn't mean they might not do it again in the future, so I wouldn't put
Wow.
it out there the way like a millage is put out there as a one-time. He's not saying this is the only time
No,
we'll do
this
this.
That's correct. It's an
He's
annual.
saying this is what we're asking for right now. I just want to clarify that so that we don't get caught saying something that turns out to be different in the
Right.
future.
Well, this board will make that decision in the future if we decide that we want to do it again, but I don't want this to become an entitlement, but certainly in reflection of the fact that inflation has been really high this past year, and this board has done things to take care of our existing employees to address that inflationary cost of living that everyone's experienced. We should probably do the same thing for our retirees this time. So I'm willing to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Commissioner Ha.
Yes.
Commissioner Nard. Commissioner Wallace. Commissioner Romano. Commissioner Van Sickle. Commissioner Zinner. Commissioner Perna. Commissioner Kraft. Commissioner Kleinfeld votes yes. Commissioner Song. Chair Brown.
Yes.
12-1 with Commissioner Kraft voting no, motion passes. 11-1, I'm sorry, Commissioner Sabatini's not here. Sorry about that. Okay, so
For the record, Chair Kleinfeld, you didn't call my name, but I was a yes.
I didn't call your name? Oh my gosh, and I told you I was on top of it, Adriana. Oh my gosh, I apologize for that. I thought I was on top of it, but I can't read my
Is
own
this
writing.
because
so-
Army beat Navy? Is this why?
I apologize. Item F, KOA Hills Consulting. Jaco,
Chair, I'll make a motion to move to full board.
thank you. Motion supported by Wallace. Motions by Zong, supported by Wallace. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We're using KOA Hills for data and field mapping and assistance with developing SQL scripts for the Workday project, moving data from one solution or Central Square, our current system, to Workday. It fills a gap and provides assistance to our staff to get this done in time with the project timelines. The money is being paid from contingency dollars of the Workday project, and we brought this to you today just because we would like to move this part of it forward.
Okay, are there any questions? Commissioner Song?
Thank you, Chair. Jacob, how many more hours after this do you anticipate will be needed to do data transfer, or what percentage of that data?
There is more transfers to come. I cannot tell you exactly how many, but I asked that same question this week when discussing that with my staff. But we'll be able to give you an estimate probably, by next week.
Okay, so not like 50% done, 75%, 25%? You can't give a ballpark figure?
I cannot do that right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
you.
Chair.
Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. We'll take G and H together. Can I get a motion? I'll go moved by Farrington, supported by Ha. Okay, go ahead.
Commissioners, we are being bombarded by security threats, as you all know, I'm sure in your personal capacity, on a daily basis. And, we have a small security department or staff that takes care of our security needs. But the amount of information that comes to us on a daily basis, we use alerts and things like that. But the biggest part of the process is also, once you receive these alerts, what do you do with them, with the staff that we have available? This company, IANS, we've done a trial with them over the past 3 months, and they have provided us, really, really significant information. One of the main things was that on multiple occasions we received alerts for security threats from them prior to the federal government or the media providing us that information. So we know that they perform really well. They really deliver what they promise. They also have a service called Ask the Expert, which is very significant. After we went this year through our cyber insurance renewal, it was a very significant event for us and very difficult and cumbersome. We set up during that trial a 1-hour consulting engagement with this company, and they have consultants all over the country with different subject matter experts on this, and it was just very well done, and the information that we got from that allowed us to have a much better insight of how this works today and how it's going to work in the future. Those are skills that we don't necessarily have in-house. They also have a large training component, as well as obviously lots of documentation and so forth. So this is a service that we would like to purchase moving forward on an annual basis, to help us with our security analysis and threats.
Are there any questions? Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you. Hi, Jacob.
Hi, Commissioner.
How many people on your staff can access this?
6, we are purchasing 6 licenses.
And so, 1 license per person?
That's correct. It is pretty expensive, to add additional licenses, but we thought that 6 licenses will work well for our organization. The people that need it will have it.
Do you have any idea how many times you've used them?
They provide us literally on a daily basis. We get a security alert, which tells us exactly what happened over the past 24 hours. It tells us what alerts came out, but it also give us some information about how we can act regarding those alerts, whether it's something we need to be concerned about or action we can take to either negate it or how critical it is and so forth. So that's provided on a daily basis. The other things that I talk about, like setting up these engagements, that's pretty much unlimited. So we can do that throughout the year as we need security guidance and assistance. As an organization, we don't have a chief information security officer. It's a very expensive position. But augmenting our services with this type of thing help us a lot to be proactive or more proactive.
Are the security alerts sent out, or do your people have to go and seek them out?
No, they send out on a daily basis to the people that are signed up.
Email?
Email, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Farrington?
Thank you, Chair. Hey, Jocko.
Hi, Commissioner.
No, this is great, and they work with a lot of municipalities. Question for you, just brought up the fact that we don't have a chief security officer. Wayne, Oakland, Kent County, how do they handle it?
Oakland County has a chief information officer. It's different in every single county. The model that we did, we went with a security administrator, which is a kind of middle-of-the-road position in security. And then we augment our services with a security partner, which we have, and this type of thing. For us, that works, and we believe that that's a good way. There's also organizations we belong to, like the state of Michigan, for example, has a security. You can call it almost like a support organization that they established 5 or 6 years ago. And you can belong to that, and we obviously dial into that. They have weekly meetings, and they, also discuss on security changes and things that people do or don't do or shouldn't do or should do. It's very informative, so we try to augment our services in that manner.
No, I fully support it. Hopefully we're doing enough, because all it takes is one hack at the wrong place at the wrong time to bring the county down. So thank you, Jacob.
Thank you. Chair Brown?
Jacob, when you say actions, what type of actions do you do if you're notified of various structures? More somebody go on that we don't even see. So what are you doing behind the scenes, the things that maybe that we don't know about?
We get, on a weekly basis, we get threats that come through. So it'll either be email, somebody received an email. We recently had a few where some of our cities, villages, and townships were compromised with email, and then those emails are sent to the county because our people have relationships with them, being sent to the county, and we learn about those things pretty quickly. And then as that happens, the actions we have to take in the background is, firstly, how does that affect our organization? So we close all gaps that we can. One of the first things we would do is to limit emails to and from that organization. That's pretty much the first step we do. Also, see if there's any of our computers internally that received that threat and actually clicked on it and started processing those type of things. And then look at our network and the performance and what's going on, anomalies in traffic and so forth, so that we can take appropriate action. But those are the type of actions, for example, on that specific one that we would take. But they differ for each and every threat, really, at the end of the day.
Each department's got different vulnerabilities. Each county department, the treasurer's office, where the money's kept, right, is obviously probably their number one, and of course, all of our personal information as well. HR. Have there been any threats to? Are we doing any? Does this company give us any additional protections for those areas, that like the treasurer's office, or how does?
Well, it's our responsibility to make sure that we have the right, measures in place. So if I can use an example, sheriff's office, with them, we have to, deal with the justice system, the justice information system. We have to follow their rules and their regulations. So we have to implement that throughout the county for people that use that type of information. For example, the sheriff's office, the courts, as well as prosecutors. We also get audited by them. So those departments are set up in that manner. When it comes to finances, personal data, those type of things, we have to make sure that those things are properly secured. So everything, health department, HIPAA regulations, we got to follow those. So all those type of things are in place. We put them in place, to make sure that we abide by regulations as is. And then, at the end of the day, these type of organizations provide us the ability to be more proactive when any of those areas are being attacked. And, that's really where the value come in for us. Because we can take proactive measures to prevent some of those things to come into our network if we know about them up front.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Song?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No question, just a comment. So I think that, the cybersecurity training is really valuable and important. Cybersecurity is a huge issue, and I think in every industry. But I think the first line of defense is really, us and the human firewall. Last May when we were in Lansing for the policy conference, there was a session about cybersecurity. I found that really helpful, about tips that we can take to prevent some of the things that you talked about from happening. A related story, because there are two Maizongs at the county. I actually, and the other one works in the prosecutor's office. I actually got an email from one of the prosecutors or the attorneys with documents for a case. And so I forwarded, over to their department right away. But I think one thing that we can do is, as we're looking at our email, not just looking at the name of who it's coming from, but the domain as well, and the email account. So things like that even happen internally. And
That's
if
correct.
it had been sent to someone else, things could have took a negative turn.
Yep, and they use that to their advantage to attack us.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Motion to receive and file correspondence A, B, and C. It's been motioned and support. Any comments, questions? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Second, public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Hi, George again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, I don't think I even need to time that one. Tom?
Yeah. Yes, on behalf of the retirees, would like to thank you for the check, but also remembering their contributions to the county. And I assure you, we have as much concern that the system stays solvent as you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close the second hearing of the public. Commissioners' comments? Commissioner Ha?
I would like to congratulate Senator-elect Kleinfeld on chairing her first Finance Committee meeting. God bless.
This term. I used to actually be the finance chair. Okay. Anyone else? All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Haas, supported by Wallace. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned.